Pull the covers up however you like, because tonight you and I are going to drift with a quiet station circling a dim red star, where everyone believes history is neat and settled. Well, watch as a forgotten human ship is hauled in like scrap, as curious researchers gather around a single cryopod with a stubborn green light. And as a soldier named Jake Martinez opens his eyes centuries late, out in the soft dark near Proxima Centauri, an empire sleeps easy, sure it already won. You're about to see what happens when the relic they found refuses to fit the story they wrote. Out in the soft dark of Proxima Centauri, an empire sleeps easy. Stations shine like slow stars. Trade ships drift on safe, fixed paths. History lessons promise that danger is over, that the wild bays of war burned out long ago with a strange, unstable species called humans. On Proxima 7 Station, that story feels solid, clean, finished, but in a forgotten bay. Inside a cracked human ship, a single green light still glows on a long, quiet cryopod. The Empire thinks it found a relic. It has actually found a trained survivor whose people were not defeated in a fair fight, but hit during their brief, honest attempt at peace. He will not rush. He will not rage. He will look around, and start to notice things. And as other cryopods begin to open across the Zaphirian Empire, far from Proxima 7, the calm surface of that easy story will start to change, not with explosions, with plans, with rules, with a slow, careful reckoning. Proxima 7 Station moved in a smooth, steady path around the dim red star. From the outside, it looked like stacked rings of silver and dark glass, dotted with soft blue lights. Cargo tugs slid in and out of docking bays. Small shuttles drifted between the station and the nearby mining platforms, leaving faint trails of ion glow. Inside, the air was cool and dry. Floors hummed softly with power. Doors opened with a gentle hiss. No alarms. No rush. The Zaphirian Empire liked its stations quiet and neat. Proxima 7 was no different. Most days, the biggest excitement came when a new wreck arrived. In Bay 12, a small crowd had gathered behind a clear barrier. Students in pale uniforms pointed and spoke in low voices. A recorded guide explained in calm, smooth Zaphirian, "Here you see the remains of a human frigate taken during the Great Pacification. Note the primitive hull design, the exposed ports, the lack of layered shielding. Human ships, though aggressive in form, fell quickly when faced with organized Imperial fire." The students nodded, eyes wide, as if they were staring at a dangerous animal that had long since gone extinct. Above them, on a hanging display, old images of human chaos played in a loop. Burning cities, crowded launch pads, ships leaving a blue planet streaked with smoke. Short clips showed human soldiers in bulky armor, running through ruined streets. The clip always cut off before anything like order appeared. Dr. Evelyn Hart stood near the back of the group, arms folded, dark hair tied up in a loose knot. Unlike most Zaphirians on the station, she had been born on a border world, close to the old human colonies. Her skin was a light brown, her eyes a clear gray that always seemed to be measuring things. She listened to the guide with half an ear and watched the wreck with more interest. Primitive, the guide said again. Chaotic, short-lived. Evelyn tilted her head. Chaotic does not build ships that cross stars, she said quietly. Veltar, standing beside her with a data slate hugged to his chest, glanced over. He was younger, with pale blue skin and small, folded ridges along his neck. Like many core world Zaphirians, he had only seen humans in holos and training sims. Doctor, he asked, did you say something? Just talking to myself, she replied. Veltar looked back at the frigate. Its hull was torn open on the left side. Frozen metal, bent out like petals, the Zaphirians had cleaned it, sealed it, and hung it like a massive insect in a museum case. History says they were unstable, Veltar said, barely united. Easy to turn aside. History loves simple stories, Evelyn said. Simple stories are tidy. Empires enjoy tidy things. He shifted his weight. You do not trust the history feeds. I trust that they teach what the Auric Spire wants children to know, she said, her voice calm. Truth is usually larger than that. Before Veltar could answer, her wristband pulsed a soft green. A message slid across the tiny display. Salvage A arrival class. Human colony vessel. Doc. 19. Lead research. DRE. Heart. Evelyn's eyebrows rose. Well, that is new. Veltar craned his neck to see. Human? Again. Not a frigate this time, she said. Colony ship. Come on. They left the viewing bay and stepped into the main corridor. The station's curves were gentle, its lights low and warm. A cleaning drone glided past their feet, gathering fine dust. In the distance, a soft chime signaled a shift change. Proxima 7 had 3 main jobs: research, salvage, and security monitoring for the Proxima region. Evelyn's lab sat at the meeting point of all 3. She liked it that way. As they rode the inner lift up toward Dock 19, Veltar scrolled through the incoming file. Registration code, he read aloud. ECV Helios Arc. Human construction. Late resource war era. Condition poor. Hull breach. Power minimal. Biosignatures. None. None so far, Evelyn said. Our scans are good, but human tech can be strange. Many side compartments. Hidden fails. You sound almost pleased, he said. I am a scientist, she answered. Dead things tell stories. Human things tell stories I have not heard yet. The lift doors opened with a soft hiss. Dock 19 smelled faintly of cooling metal and ion fuel. A wide viewing panel looked out on the tug holding the human ship. The Helios Ark floated there, scarred and silent. It was larger than the frigate downstairs. Its hull was long and worn, its outer plates patched with dark, rough panels. Most of its paint had flaked away, but near the nose, faded blue letters still clung to the metal. Hellas Ark, Earth Colonial Defense. Veltar squinted. Defense? A colony ship that fights? Colonies needed protection. Evelyn said resources were short. Threats were many. Humans built ships that were half home, half shield, half spear. That is 3 halves, Doctor. They were creative with fractions, she said, smiling. A crew of Zaphirian salvage techs moved along the docking bridge, their suits lined with yellow stripes. Chief Amal, a broad-shouldered woman with silver implants along her jaw, turned as Evelyn approached. You are going to like this. The old beast still has a heartbeat. Evelyn's eyes brightened. Power? Trickles, Amal said. Some old reactor deep inside that refuses to die. And something else. They walked together toward the environmental lock. Outside the window, the tug eased the Helios arc in closer. Magnetic clamps gripped with a heavy thud that trembled through the deck. What else? Evelyn asked. Amal tapped her wristband, sending a feed to Evelyn and Veltar. A 3D map of the arc appeared over their arms. Glowing lines, tracing decks and compartments. One small oval near the ship's midline glowed. Green. Life support unit, Amal said. Human design. Power draw is steady. We ran a scan from the outside. Inside, there is a cryogenic pod. Still active. Signals are weak but clear. Veltar stared at the green mark. A living human? Unclear, Amal said. Biometrics are strange. Old machine codes. Heart rate pattern does not match any standard database. But the pod is running. Could just be a ghost circuit, an empty shell. Evelyn's heartbeat picked up, or it could be a preserved subject. You are the expert. Security wants it under glass. Science wants it on a table. Emperor's office wants a picture to post. I just want it out of my dock before it vents something toxic. Veltar shifted his data slate. Are humans still dangerous, Chief? Amal thought about it for a moment. History says no. My gut says I do not like unknown things near my fuel lines. That is enough for me. They moved through the lock into the human ship. The air inside was cold and dry, laced with a faint, sharp smell of old plastics and burned wiring. Their helmet lamps lit long halls, lined with open doors. They walked past cracked screens and fallen panels. They walked past cracked screens and fallen panels. Empty bunks hung open. A child's toy lay in the dust. A small plastic animal with one leg gone. Chaotic, Veltar said softly, though his voice sounded less sure now. Chaotic does not label every panel in 3 languages, Evelyn replied, pointing at a nearby wall. Human letters, symbols, and simple icons marched in clear rows. Even now, they were easy to follow. Amal led the way down a tight passage and through a sealed bulkhead. Cryobay is 2 decks down. Internal doors were locked but not fused, almost as if the ship meant for someone to find it. They reached the cryo chamber. Rows of pods lined the walls, stacked too high. Frost clung to the transparent lids. Most pods were dark, their readouts dead. Some lids were shattered, holding only ice and old air. Near the center of the room, a single pod glowed a faint, steady green. "There," Amal said. They stepped closer. Inside the pod lay a human man, muscles relaxed, eyes closed. Frost rimmed his dark hair and rough jaw. Tubes ran from his arms and neck into the sides of the pod. His chest moved in slow, deep breaths. The readout on the side showed symbols and numbers in an old human script. Evelyn's translator tried its best, filling in gaps. Name Martins. Jake rank. SFC. ECDF status. Choose. Cryo sleep. Stable elapsed time. Years. The last line fuzzed out in a mess of broken digits. Martinez, Evelyn read, Mayo. Soldier likely. Heart rate slow but firm. Neural patterns. Veltar leaned in, pressing his palm gently to the clear lid, then pulled back as if it might bite. He looks ordinary, Veltar said. Not like the feeds, no wild eyes. No shouting. He is asleep, Evelyn reminded him, though she also felt a strange calm looking at the man, like a storm that had already passed, yet still held shape. Security will want restraints, Amal said. The commander already sent a message. Treat as possible hostile, display for review, then transfer to core lab. Display, Evelyn repeated, like a fossil. Amal shrugged. You know how the Empire likes its trophies. Veltar frowned, but Doctor, if he wakes, think of the data, direct brain scans, muscle structure, memory extraction. We have never had a live human subject. Hendy said have had a live human subject. When no signal, how be, habi. I am thinking of data, Evelyn said. And also of consent. Amal gave a short laugh. Consent. He belongs to history now. History does not ask. Evelyn studied the face in the pod. Small lines at the corners of his eyes, faint scars along his hands, visible through the frost. Not a fresh recruit. Someone who had carried weight for a long time. History, she said softly, already spoke over his people once. I am not eager to repeat that. Veltar shifted. But the great pacification was defensive. Humans attacked, we answered. That is what the core feeds say. They nearly tore their own world apart. We saved the region from their spread. That is what the core feeds say. Evelyn. Agreed? Border records tell different things. Old local logs talk of ceasefires. No P, disarmament steps. Talks. Then an imperial fleet somewhere decides that a weak neighbor is still a risk. She nodded toward the pod. And then ships like this vanish. Veltar bit his lip. If that is true, why would the spire lie? Lies is a sharp word, Evelyn said. Stories are smoother. They skip rough parts. Easier to teach children that way. Behind them, the ship creaked softly as Proxima 7's gravity systems took more of its weight. A male checked her chronometer. All right. We brace the pod, cut it free, and tow it to your lab. Security will meet you there. Try not to break him before they get their holos. Evelyn nodded slowly. I will keep him alive if I can. That is my job. As the salvage team began to free the pod from its mounting, Veltar stood back and watched the still face. Inside, do you think he will remember anything? Veltar asked. If the system worked as designed, Evelyn said he might remember everything. War, evacuation. Veltar's stomach tightened. I would not wish that on anyone, he said. Evelyn looked at the green glow of the status light. History already did. She replied, They moved the cryopod through Proxima 7's inner corridors. On a floating graph gurney, the pod's faint green light washed the walls as it passed. Station staff stopped to stare, then pretended not to. A live human, even sleeping, made people nervous. Evelyn walked beside the pod, checking the readings on her wristband. Veltar pushed the gurney, careful not to bump any corners. 2 security officers followed, guns at low ready, helmets sealed. Level of force? One guard asked over the link. If subject wakes aggressive, non-lethal only. Evelyn said at once. He is not an active combatant. He has been asleep for centuries. Centuries-old predator. Still a predator, the guard muttered. But she lowered her weapon slightly. They reached Lab 4, a medium-sized room with high ceilings and thick glass walls. Monitors lined the far side. A central exam platform waited, its support arms folded down. Inside, Commander Tessa Rourke stood with her hands clasped behind her back. She wore dark security armor marked with clean white lines of rank. Tessa's hair was shaved close on the sides, longer on top, steel gray. Despite her not-so-old age, Rourke had grown up on stories of the great Pacification. Her grandparents had served in the fleets that bombed human shipyards. To her, this moment felt like a family legend stepping into real time. Dr. Hart, Tessa said. Veltar. Good work on the recovery. Thank the salvage team, Commander, Evelyn replied. They did the hard part. Tessa's sharp eyes moved to the pod as it settled onto the exam platform. He looks smaller than I imagined. Cryosleep reduces muscle volume, Evelyn said. Once awake, with food and movement, he will look more solid. Assuming we wake him at all, Tessa said, the Spire will want to weigh in. They have already weighed in, Evelyn said, pulling up a message icon. Direct from Oryx Spire. Revive. Subject under controlled conditions. Assess threat. Record all data. If hostile, neutralize. If docile, retain for study. Veltar shifted his weight. Docile, he repeated quietly. Like a pet, Tessa heard and gave a small shrug. History is not kind, Veltar. They were a hazard. We ended that hazard. Having a live sample is useful. Subjects have names, Evelyn said. This one is Sergeant First Class Jake Martinez. He was not a hazard. He was a person, with a file, a rank, and likely a family. Tessa's eyes narrowed. Doctor, I respect your ethics, but I am responsible for this station. My duty is to make sure that whatever climbs out of that box does not rip through my people. Evelyn nodded. And my duty is to make sure we do not repeat the past by acting like butchers. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. This was an old tension between research and security. But on Proxima 7, it had never been about something that could look back. Maybe we can do both, he said. Safe and kind. Both women turned to him. Thank you, philosophy unit, Tessa said dryly. But there was no bite to it. We do this your way, Doctor. Non-lethal field. Emergency sedatives. Full monitoring. She tapped her wrist. A soft blue glow rose from the floor around the pod, forming a gentle force barrier. Not strong enough to stop heavy weapons, but enough to slow sudden movement. Veltar, Evelyn said. Run a full pre-wake scan. I want bone density, neural readiness, muscle tone, anything the pod will share. Veltar's fingers flew over his slate. The pod linked with a faint, stubborn ping, like an old door that still opened if you knew the trick. Graphs and numbers filled his screen. Bone density. High, he said, frowning. Very high for a human this size. Almost like light combat armor in organic form. Muscle fiber density is above reference to enhanced physiology. Evelyn said softly. Could be genetic. Could be a side effect of cryosleep stress. Look at the neural pattern. Veltar zoomed in. Strong baseline. No major decay. There is an odd rhythm in the frontal lobe. Almost like mid-alert state. But the rest of the brain shows deep rest. So he is half asleep, half ready, Tessa said. Comforting. Caution is not a crime, Evelyn replied. If his military doctrine included rapid wake-up drills, his brain might have learned to rest and prepare at the same time. Doctrine? Veltar asked. Set habits, Evelyn said. Rules burned into the mind. Ways of acting that do not fail, even when tired or afraid. Tessa checked the readings herself. Heart rate is low, but steady, she said. No sign of shock. Reflex pathways bright. She let out a slow breath. Very well. Wake him. Evelyn's fingers danced across the pod controls. She sent a gentle command to the old system. For a second, nothing happened. Then the green status light shifted to a soft amber. Inside the pod, tiny valves clicked. The frost on the lid began to melt, lowering cryo support. Evelyn said quietly, raising temperature, flushing lungs, bringing metabolic rate up in stages. Condensation ran down the clear surface. Jake's chest rose a little faster. His fingers twitched once, then stilled, then twitched again. Veltar leaned closer, then forced himself to step back. His throat felt dry. "Is he dreaming?" Beltar asked. "Possibly," Evelyn said. "His brain waves show movement through shallow layers. He may slip past old memories as he climbs toward now." The pod released a small cloud of old air. A light chimed. The lid unsealed with a soft hiss and began to lift. Warm station air flowed in. Jake's eyes stayed closed, but his breathing quickened. His hands flexed, finding the edge of the pod. Muscles along his arms tensed. Tessa raised one hand. The guards shifted, ready, but not aiming directly at him. Jake's eyes snapped open. They were dark brown, sharp and focused at once. Not hazy, as most long sleepers were. For a second he stared at the ceiling. His lips moved silently, counting. 4, 5, 6. He took a deeper breath, then turned his head slightly, taking in the room. He saw the barrier glow. The guards, Tessa's armor, Beltar's pale face, Evelyn's calm gaze. Evelyn's calm gaze, not Helios, he said, voice rough but steady. Not my ship. His accent clipped some syllables. Old Earth, Texas, Evelyn guessed. Sergeant Jake Martinez, she asked. Earth Colonial Defense Force. His eyes moved to her. He scanned her coat, her badge, the devices in her hands. She could almost feel him sorting things into categories. Not immediate threat, not familiar uniform, unknown chain of command. Yes, ma'am, he said slowly. Martinez. SFC, Cryo Sleep Evac Detail, Helios Arc. Status, unknown. Welcome to Proxima 7 Station, Evelyn said. You have been in cryosleep for a very long time. He pushed himself up onto his elbows. Lines of strain showed along his neck, but his movement was smooth, controlled. Not clumsy, not weak. The blue barrier shimmered slightly. As his shoulder brushed near it, he noticed at once and adjusted so he did not touch it again. How long? He asked. Give me a year stamp. It is the year 3285 by Imperial Standard, Evelyn said. Helios Arc left your staging area in 2493. By human record, you have slept almost 800 years. He took that in without a visible flinch. His jaw moved once, like he was biting down on something. Status of Earth? He asked. Uninhabitable surface, Tessa answered. Orbital debris, scattered domes. No open sky. Population evacuated or died centuries ago. Status of human colonies? He asked. Evelyn and Tessa traded a glance. Most are gone, Evelyn said. Some were taken by the Zaphirian Empire during the Great Pacification. Some failed on their own. A few mixed populations remain on the far edges, but as a major force, humanity is considered extinct. Jake's eyes did not change, but his hands tightened on the side of the pod. Tessa stepped forward. I am Commander Tessa Rourke, Security Chief of Proxima 7. This station is under the authority of the Zaphirian Empire. You are currently A protected subject. Your cooperation will make this easier. He looked at her armor, then at the guards, weapons. His gaze flicked to the seams in the door, the corners of the ceiling, the anchor points of the exam platform. His attention moved fast, but not frantic. Zaphirian Empire, he repeated. You are the Purple Star Flag folks. Border threat. High-tech, expansionist, high-tech and stable, Tessa said. We brought order to this sector after your species burned it. Jake let out a slow breath, not quite a laugh. Is that what they tell you? He asked, his voice still calm. Tessa's eyes cooled. That is what the records show. Which records? He asked. Yours or ours? Evelyn stepped in before the mood could harden. Sergeant Martinez, she said gently, we have much to ask, but your body has just gone through a large shock. We should check your vitals, make sure your systems are stable. I am Dr. Defrand, Evelyn Hart. This is my assistant, Veltar. We work in research, not military. He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded once. All right, Doc, he said. Run your checks. She moved closer with a hand scanner. As she did, she watched the way he sat up. He did not grab the side or wobble. He shifted his weight to his center, moved smoothly, like standing from a foxhole with rounds in the air, even weak from long sleep. His balance was sure. She scanned his chest. The display lit up. Heart and lungs normal, she said. Bone density is still very high. You are heavier on the inside than you look. Combat prep program, he said. Bone knit, microdense, layering. We called it brick mode. Kept more of us walking after drops. You volunteered for that? Veltar asked, eyes wide. Jake glanced at him. Did not feel like much of a choice, kid. Resource wars chewed through soft bodies fast. You either hardened up or got buried. He flexed his hand and accidentally squeezed the side rail of the pod. The metal frame bent with a faint, sharp crack. Veltar jumped. Tessa's hand went to her weapon. Jake frowned at the bent rail. Surprised. Sorry, he said. Guess the muscles woke up faster than the manners. Evelyn checked the scanner again. Interest bright in her eyes. Reflex speed is above baseline too. Cryo did something unusual to your nervous system. Your reaction time is impressive. Last thing the techs said before they iced us. Jake replied, was that the long sleep might stack training layers. Old drills might come out smoother. Did not plan to test it 800 years later, though. Your calm is unusual as well, Evelyn said. Most long-term sleepers wake disoriented. You seem clear. He shrugged slightly. We trained for bad wake-ups. If you open your eyes and it is all gone, you still have a job. You breathe, you check, you ask questions. Falling apart comes later, if there's time. Tessa watched him closely. And what is your job now? He met her gaze, his eyes steady. Figure out what happened, he said. Make sure whoever else got out is safe, if anyone did. Do not let panic make things worse." "Panic?" Veltar asked. Jake shifted, resting his elbows on his knees. "Doc," he said, eyes still on Tessa, "you said great pacification. You said my species burned the sector, and your empire brought order. I need you to answer something very clearly." Evelyn nodded. "Ask, what year did your empire first strike a human system in force?" he asked. "First official invasion. Not a skirmish, not a border raid. Not a border raid. Big fleet. Full push." Tessa blinked at the directness. "That is in every history module," she said. "The Great Pacification began in 2495 Standard, when human raids made peaceful contact impossible." 2495, Jake repeated softly. His eyes went distant for a heartbeat, then focused again. "And when did my people finish the resource wars and sign the disarmament accords?" He asked. "You have that in your files too, if you took our systems." Evelyn pulled data with a flick of her hand. "Old human logs, seized and translated long ago. According to your records," she said slowly, "the main disarmament treaty was signed in late 2490. Hostilities dropped sharply by 2490. One full enforcement by 2493. Most frontline weapons dismantled or stored by 2494. Jake gave a small, humorless smile. "So," he said, "let me line this up. We tear ourselves apart for resources. We lay down heavy arms. We start shuffling ships like Helios to haul civilians out. Not troops in." He looked from Evelyn to Tessa. "And 2 years after our guns go cold, your empire shows up with shiny fleets and calls it self-defense against human raids. Veltar, swallowed, the feeds say, you were preparing to strike us." Jake shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "We were so sick of killing that my unit got moved from frontline to escort duty. We guarded evac boats full of kids and old folks. We were told the war was over, that we were there to make sure it stayed that way." His hands were steady, but his voice had a hard edge now. "You did not beat us in a fair fight," he said quietly. "You hit colonies mid-evac during disarm. You hit ships like mine, while we were busy counting how many people we could save, not how many you might send." Silence settled in the lab. Veltar glanced at Tessa, then at Evelyn. The simple lines in his training modules suddenly felt thin. "That cannot be right," Tessa said, though it sounded more like hope than firm belief. "Our records, your records started after you finished bombing our archives," Jake said. "You wrote the story. Of course you come out looking clean." Evelyn felt a slow weight forming in her chest. She thought of the cut clips in the museum hall, the way they always stopped before any human flags of truce appeared. "Sergeant," she said carefully, "we only have your word so far." Gave a small nod. "That is fair. Do not trust the first man out of a coffin. Trust patterns. Trust logs. Trust whoever else you dig up from my people." He looked down at the bent metal rail. then back at her. You said this ship's labels still read Earth Colonial Defense. You said the pod logs show evac tags. Check the navigation core. Look at our flight plan. Look at cargo lists. You will not find strike orders. You will find families, food packs, medical crates. That is not what an invasion looks like. Veltar, without thinking, started pulling up the Helios Ark's partial data feed. "Doctor," he said softly, "the preliminary cargo scan did show a lot of cryopods. Most slots empty now, but the labels, they are civilian codes, teachers, engineers, children. Logistics." Jake's head turned fast. "Logistics," he repeated. "Did you find a pod marked Okoye, Amara?" "Rank, Logistics Officer, ECD, F." Veltar scrolled. "Not on this ship. No. But the salvage report mentioned other human pods found over the last decades. Scattered. A few. Missing. Listed as lost or turned over to Black Labs." Jake's eyes darkened. "Then she might already be awake somewhere," he said. "Or she might wake later. So might pilots, medics, communications techs. If Helios Ark was part of a larger net, then my people are not just dust. They are seeds you moved around your own empire without noticing." Tessa crossed her arms. "You are making large claims for a man who just learned what century it is." "I am doing my job," he said simply. "That is what soldiers do when they climb out of cover." He looked back at Evelyn. "You said my physiology is different," he said. "Bones, reflexes. Fine. That may matter later. But what matters now is history. You think you crushed a war-hungry species at its peak. I am telling you, you hit a tired, half-disarmed neighbor mid-recovery. That is not the same story." Evelyn's thoughts moved fast. If he was right, then the great Pacification was not a brave stand against chaos. It was an opportunistic strike on a weak, wounded partner. Why would the Empire lie to its own people? Veltar asked quietly. Jake looked at him with something like tired kindness. "Because it is easier to sleep at night if you believe the thing under your boot tried to bite you first," he said. "Nobody likes to think they live in a house built on someone else's grave." He swung his legs over the side of the pod and stood. The blue barrier flared as it met his skin, then held. He did not push it. He just tested its give. The way a soldier checks a wall. He stood a little too straight for someone who had just left 8 centuries of sleep. His balance barely wavered. Tessa watched his control, the easy strength in his movement. Worry touched the back of her mind. "You move well for a relic," she said. He gave a half smile. "Last tech who iced me said I might wake up extra crispy." Guess they were right. He looked at the room again. The doors, the screens, the quiet hum of power. "You think your empire is safe," he said softly. "Stable. All threats gone. But out there, on your mining moons and forgotten docks, you have more pods like this. People like me, people better than me. logistics officers who can turn supplies into strategy, pilots who can fly anything, medics who can keep a squad moving long after sane folks would stop. He met Tessa's gaze, and if they wake up in the dark chained in some lab, and they believe your story, this neat tale about how we were monsters who had to be put down, they might act like monsters just to match it. He took a slow breath. That is what I am here to stop if I can, he said. No wild revenge, no blind strikes. Just facts, plans, rules. Evelyn studied his face. There was no heat in his eyes, only a careful, heavy steadiness. What rules? She asked. Not ready to write them all yet, he said. Still missing too much. But I know this much already. He tapped the side of his head. Never let the first story be the only story. That is where genocides start. The words sat in the air sharp and cold. Veltar shivered. Outside the lab, Proxima 7 Station moved in its quiet circle, the Empire's proud, polished routines going on as always. But inside Lab 4, under soft lights and thin blue glow, a myth had just taken its first crack. For the next 3 days, Jake Martinez did almost everything he was told. He ate the meals the med team brought. He answered most of Evelyn's questions. He sat still for scans. He let Veltar stick sensors on his chest and arms and forehead. He moved slowly, spoke calmly, and kept his hands where security could see them. On the surface, he looked like a model subject. Underneath, he was busy. Lab 4 became his cage and his lookout post. From the exam platform, he could see half the room and parts of the corridor beyond, through the glass walls. Every time the door slid open, he glanced up just once. That was enough. He watched how long the door took to close. He watched the guard shift changes. He watched which way the patrols turned first. He counted footsteps, checked the weight in each stride. He listened too. The station's hum had layers. A faint throb of the main reactor, a higher whine from the grav rings. Short, sharp clicks from the lab's autolockers. Every system had a sound. Every change meant something. By the end of the first day, he knew when the lab's air filter cycled, when the nearby med bay ran its big sterilizer, and when the security hub sent a test ping to the force fields. By the end of the second, he could tell which guard was on duty, just from the rhythm of their walk. On the third day, Evelyn walked in to find him sitting cross-legged on the platform, eyes closed, breathing slow. "Are you all right?" she asked. He opened his eyes. "Just working." "On what?" Veltar asked. "Curious as always." "Maps," Jake said. Veltar looked around the lab. "But you have not left this room." Jake pointed at his ear. "I do not need to. The station talks. You just are not listening yet." Tessa, who had stepped in behind them, snorted lightly. "Station talks," she said. "What is it saying, Sergeant?" Jake gave a small shrug. "Power draw spiked on your outer rings about an hour ago, then smoothed out in a spiral pattern. That is a new ship docking on a slow roll. Pretty big, you run freight that way. not patrols. He nodded toward the wall. Air pressure dipped by a hair in the corridor 10 minutes back. Not enough for a leak. Enough that your environmental system opened a bypass to balance another section. Probably a Medwing purge cycle near Dock 6. Veltar's jaw dropped. You can tell all that from sounds and tiny changes in air. Smells too, Jake said lightly. Filters swap, the air taste shifts. You build these habits when living aboard rust buckets that like to fail at bad times. He flexed his fingers. And you log what you hear over and over, till you can draw the deck plan in your head. Tessa's eyes narrowed. You are building a station map in your mind. Yes, ma'am, he said plainly. If things go bad, I do not plan on wandering blind. She folded her arms. We have not given you access to any schematics. Don't need them, he replied. I have footsteps, air, power hum, timing. Your people repeat patterns. Patterns build maps. He said it as if he were talking about the weather. Evelyn hid a small shiver. It was not just his muscles that cryosleep had sharpened. Do you plan to escape? Tessa asked, voice cool. He met her gaze without flinching. If I wanted out, he said, you would know. There would be noise, blood. Then why build maps? Veltar asked. In case someone else needs them, Jake said. I am not your only problem. He swung his legs over the side of the platform and stood. The blue field shimmered faintly around him, as it always did. He said to Evelyn, you saw the manifest tags on Helios Ark. Cryopods, lots of them. You think that ship was alone? We have records of several human colony ships in that era, Evelyn said slowly. Some never reached their targets. Some were destroyed. Some we do not know. You grabbed wreckage over the years, Jake said, stuck it in museums. Cut it open for study, maybe found other pods. There are reports of human cryopods found on mining sites and old docks, Veltar said, pulling up notes. Most were dead. A few were sent to core labs. And Course B, some files are redacted. Tessa shot him a brief look that said nothing. Jake nodded. There you go. That is your real problem. Not me. I woke up with a doctor and a young tech and a security chief staring at me. I had time to think. To get past the first burn. He looked at Tessa. But what about the poor grunt who wakes up in a black lab with a shock collar on his neck and a scalpel over his eye? Or the pilot who comes out of ice alone in a mine tunnel, surrounded by aliens digging up her dead ship? You think I am dangerous because I can bend metal without trying? That is nothing compared to what a scared, trained mind can do with a full station to hide in. Veltar swallowed. You think others are waking now? Jake's eyes moved to the ceiling, as if he could see through the decks. Yes, if he could see through the decks. I think if my pod is ticking again after 800 years, he said, others will not be far behind. Systems like this failed on a curve, some early, some late. Some got rebooted by accident when salvagers hooked up power. He tapped his temple. And if those pods came from ships like Helios, their people had the same doctrine packs burned into their heads that I did. Doctrine, Evelyn repeated. You mentioned that before. Jake sat back down more slowly. Doctrine is rule sets, he said. Battle habits, clear steps. So if you drop a squad on a moon with no contact, and they all trained the same, they will move in sync without having to talk. He ticked off on his fingers. Secure, connect, expand. That was the short version we used for colony defense, explained Tessa said. Secure, Jake said. Lock down your own air, food and ground. No wild firing, no waste, no panic. Make sure your squad and any civilians near you stay breathing. He held up another finger. Connect. Find other humans. Use any comms you can find. If no comms, use timed moves and preset signals. We had standards for almost everything. Light codes, heat codes, even how to leave marks on bulkheads. Veltar leaned forward. So even without orders coming in, your people would behave like parts of a larger machine. Pretty much, Jake said. We learned hard that radios fail when you need them most. So we baked in habits. You could drop us on 3 different rocks and still get a straight line out of it. What about expand? Evelyn asked. That comes after the first 2, Jake said. You only push out once your base is solid and your ties to others are strong. Expand meant taking control of critical points around you. Power, water, transport, without killing more than you had to. He looked around the lab. That part is important, he added. We were not saints. But after the resource wars, Command hammered it into us. Every corpse is a future grudge. You want a stable colony, you do not start by butchering neighbors. Tessa gave a faint smile that did not touch her eyes. And yet your species still almost destroyed itself. We had bad leaders and worse times, Jake said. We learned late, but we did learn. He turned back to Evelyn. So here is what I think is happening, he said. Your empire has human relics scattered across its guts. Not just in pretty display bays. In back rooms. In black labs. In storage. Some of those relics have beating hearts. He spread his hands. Maybe a cryopod fails on a mining moon. A tech hooks it up to a power tap just to see what glows. A green light comes on. No alarm. No big notice. They put it on a cart. Plan to send it to a research hub later. He looked at Tessa. Then it opens early. Tessa's jaw tightened. Do you have proof of this? Or is this just fear? Jake held her gaze. Fear shouts, I am talking. Before anyone could answer, Veltar's wristband buzzed with a harsh tone. He frowned and flicked it open. Unusual, he said. Priority bulletin from Ops. No action needed. Subject, communications, hiccups. Tessa stepped over. Show me. He pushed the data to the room display. A list of short reports stacked up in mid-air. Outpost D, ELT. 9, strontium belt, Biariacamas loss. 12, minutes. Auto restart. No damage. Mining Camp K A L L I S 3. El Cal power loop. Central server logs corrupted. All personnel account for. Remote relay NEX. 1-2. Camera feed offline. Sensors nominal. Manton's drone dispatched. Each item ended with the same line. No hostile activity. Detected. Space is big, Tessa said. Systems glitch. That is why we have redundancy. Jake studied the list. Strontium belt? He asked. Good metals. Hard to reach. You put critical stuff there? Drill sites, refineries. Some storage, Tessa said. Nothing strategic. And Callus, 3 deep mine. Helium, 3 draw. Low population, mostly workers, and a few bots. Remote relay next 1-2. Signal hub near an old war graveyard, Veltar said. Lots of debris there. We use it to bounce messages around dense fields. Jake nodded slowly. Mining, storage, signal hubs, he said. Sounds small. Not exciting. Not like your capital or main yards. Yes, Tessa said. That is why it is an informational notice, not an alert. He looked at Evelyn. If you were going to move inside an enema space without peace talks, he said, would you start with the big flashy centers or with the fringe? The fringe, she said quietly. Less attention, more leverage than it looks like. Veltar shifted uneasily. You think those glitches are humans? I think it fits the pattern, Jake said. You wake up behind someone's lines. You secure your air and food. You secure your air and food. You take over the nearest comms quietly. You watch. You wait. Tessa shook her head. We would see signs, body cams, panic calls. Not if whoever woke up knows what downed networks look like, Jake said. First move in a hostile base is to blind it, cut cameras, loop a few feeds, make everything look boring. He pointed at the relay report. Camera feed offline, sensors nominal. That is exactly what I would do if I wanted to hide real changes, but not raise flags. Veltar scrolled down. There is more, he said, voice tightening. Core just added a note. Unrelated incident. Civilian freighter reports emergency beacon near old human station. In the Lysa Rim. Beacon cut off mid-scan. Likely hardware failure. Jake's attention snapped to that line. Like a magnet. Old human station, he repeated. Still has power enough to throw a beacon. Gets cut off mid-scan. Hardware does not fail that neatly. Evelyn's skin prickled. You think someone turned it off? I think someone got tired of being looked at, Jake said. Tessa pulled the list back, frustration creeping into her voice. You are building the story out of bits and shadows. We cannot panic an empire over a few lost signals. I am not asking you to panic, he said. I am asking you to think like my people had to think. Slow, careful, assume the worst, aim for the best. He rubbed his wrist, where cryolines had left faint marks. If humans are waking across your net, he said, most of them will not know what year it is. They might not get a calm dock and a chat. They might wake under a knife or a gun. They will see strange aliens in armor and think, the war never ended. He looked between Evelyn and Veltar. You think you beat us when we were at our worst, he went on. You have never seen what we can do on our best behavior. You do not want to meet the worst version of us again. Evelyn stepped closer, studying his face. What would your doctrine tell you to do now? She asked. If you were out there waking in a mine or a relay hub, he answered without pause. Secure, he said. Get control of life support, power, doors. Make sure nobody can gas you in your sleep. He held up a hand. Connect. Use whatever comms gear is lying around. Human hardware. Alien does not matter. Send a simple signal on known human bands. We had a lot of standard pings. Like what? Veltar asked. Jake thought for a moment. Basic WakeNet call would be something like Phoenix actual to all units, status yellow. Confirm survivors. Hold fire. Await rules. Different units use different tags, but Phoenix was common for long sleep ops. He glanced at the lab's ceiling as if he could see the comms arrays. If even two pods link up, he said, they will start pooling knowledge. What year is it? Who is in charge? How dirty was the hit? Tessa's jaw set. You talk like this is already in motion. He looked at her. You had me frozen under your feet for who knows how long, he said. Your empire is big. Your attention is thin. You think I am the first to make it this far? The question sat between them like a weight. For a while, the only sound in the lab was the hum of the air system. At last Evelyn spoke. Sergeant, she said, if there is a human network starting up inside Imperial space, what do you want it to do? He did not answer right away. His gaze dropped to his hands. When he spoke, his voice was lower. What I want, he said, is for them to go home. But there is no home. Not like we knew it. He looked up. So the job changes. The goal becomes making sure that whatever we build next is not just a slower war. He took a breath. My doctrine would say, secure without slaughter. Connect without panic. Expand without burning every bridge behind you. He gave a short, tired smile. Easier said than done. Veltar hesitated, then asked, and what if they do not listen? What if they wake angry and start hitting everything with a Zaphirian flag? Jake's eyes hardened. Then your empire and my people will chew each other up from the inside out, he said. Small hits first. Mine accidents, lost tugs. Then bigger things, fuel depots, trade hubs. He shook his head. You will call it terrorism. They will call it payback. And neither side will be fully wrong. Tessa straightened. So you want to guide them? Yes, he said simply. But if the fire is coming either way, I would rather aim it away from civilians. She studied him. You talk like you already have a way to reach them. He met her gaze. and for the first time since he had woken, a hint of caution, almost guilt, crossed his face. "I have ideas," he said. "Our doctrine has hooks. Common phrases. Triggers. If I can get a narrowband signal out on old human channels, anyone awakened listening will know what kind of man is talking to them." Veltar frowned. "But you do not have access to our comms." Jake's eyes slid just briefly toward the far wall, where a silent bank of equipment sat behind. Tessa followed his look and swore under her breath. "Doctor," she said to Evelyn, "I told you." Map in his head, plans in his eyes. Evelyn folded her arms. "Commander, you cannot keep him deaf forever. Word will spread anyway. At least if he speaks to any awakened humans first. He might cool them down, or he might coordinate them." Tessa shot back, turned scattered fires into a blaze. Jake held up both hands. "If I wanted chaos," he said, "I would shut up and let your empire run into my people by accident. Nothing fuels a war like surprise." He looked at Tessa. "You are a soldier," he said. "You know this. Order does not come from locking everything down. It comes from clear rules and people who believe in them." Tessa's jaw worked. "My duty is to my citizens," she said, "not to ghosts from a dead war." "Then think of them," he said quietly. "Think of the miners on Collis. 3. If an angry combat engineer wakes under their feet and decides they are all fair targets." He stepped closer to the inner edge of the blue field. "Give me one narrowband line," he said. "One shot. You can monitor every word. You can cut it the second I go off script. Let me try to set rules before this gets loud." Evelyn looked between them. "Commander," she said softly, "if he is right, we are already late, and if he is wrong, a test call on a dead band will do nothing." Tessa stared at Jake for a long time. At last she exhaled slowly. "You get one attempt," she said. "Short. Controlled. In my presence. Tech team will build a blind between you and the main grid. If I see even a hint that you are poking at our systems, it ends." Jake gave a small nod. "That is fair." Veltar's eyes shone with nervous excitement. "I will help set the filters," he said. "We can limit the bandwidth. Force voice only, no code injection." Tessa pointed a finger at him. "And you will lock out any protocol you do not recognize." "I mean it, Veltar. This is not a game." "Yes, Commander," he said. Quickly, as they began to set up the comm unit in a separate shielded room. Next to the lab, Jake sat back down. He stared at his hands again, flexing them slowly. Evelyn watched him. "You are worried," she said. "Of course I am worried," he replied. "I am about to shout into a dark room where some very scared, very skilled people might be hiding. If they hear my voice, I become responsible for whatever they do next." He looked up at her. "You asked what drives me?" he said. "Duty. Simple word, heavy load." She held his gaze. "You also said you do not want another genocide. I saw too much of the first ones," he replied. "Once you have watched cities die slowly, you stop thinking big deaths make any kind of sense." The lab door slid open again. A junior comms tech waved from the next room, where a compact console now sat in a field of dull blue light. Cables ran to heavy dampers in the walls. Shielded and isolated, Tessa said. Voice only, narrow range. Aimed at old human bands we barely use. You get 30 seconds, Sergeant. No more. Jake stepped off the platform and walked to the edge of his barrier. Tessa tapped a control. The field dropped with a soft crackle. The guards tense, but he did not bolt. He simply walked, slow and steady, into the comm room. Evelyn, Veltar, and Tessa followed. Monitors lit up, showing signal strength, frequency spread, and a dozen other measures. Jake stood in front of the microphone. He closed his eyes for a moment. "What will you say?" Veltar asked in a hushed voice. Jake opened his eyes again. They were steady. "Something they will recognize," he said, "and something they need to hear." Tessa nodded at the tech. "Timer on my mark." A soft tone sounded. A thin line of green on the main screen showed an open path. "Go," Tessa said. Jake leaned in. His voice when he spoke was calm and clear. "Phoenix Actual," he said, using slow, old Earth English. "To all surviving units in range. This is Sergeant First Class Jake Martinez, Earth Colonial Defense Force, Long Sleep Evac Detail." He paused for half a heartbeat. "Status yellow," he went on. "Repeat, status yellow. You are behind hostile lines, but this is not an active battlefield. Rules of engagement as follows. Secure. Connect. No unnecessary killing." Veltar watched the signal trace twitch, as if something far away had stirred. Jake continued. "If you can hear this, you are not alone," he said. "Empire that hit us thinks the war is over. They are wrong about how it started. They do not have the full story. Do not let rage write the next chapter." His eyes flicked toward Tessa and Evelyn, then back to the mic. "Hold fire unless fired on," he said. "Protect civilians. Gather intel. Confirm year, region, chain of command, if any. If you can, avoid contact until we set clear lines. We will try to reach you again with more data." The green line on the main screen pulsed. "And more data the A." Veltar's heart hammered. Jake drew a breath. "Phoenix Actual out," he said, and stepped back. "Cut it," Tessa ordered. The tech hit a switch. The green line dropped to flat. Silence fell in the room, thick and strange. 30 seconds, Tessa said. "You used them well." Jake rubbed the back of his neck. "Now we wait," he said. "If anyone is awake and close enough, they will hear that. And if they were thinking about doing something stupid, maybe they will think twice." Veltar stared at the empty signal graph. "Will they answer?" he asked. Jake shook his head. "Not yet. Not smart. Any human who grew up in the last days of the wars knows better than to blurt back on an open line. If they answer at all, it will be quiet." Indirect fur, Tessa folded her arms. "Or maybe there is no one to hear you." "Maybe," he said softly. "I would be fine with that, but none of them really believed it. Back in Lab 4, as Jake let the barrier close around him again. A new alert popped up on a side monitor that no one was watching at that moment. Remote REM E X 12BISIGN Mote Speak on Legacy Band Oregon Uncon Auto Log Saved. Camera feed still offline. On a small, half-forgotten relay node near a graveyard of human and Zaphirian wrecks, a tiny hidden subroutine in an old human box woke up for the first time in centuries. It listened to the words that had just crossed space. Secure. Connect. No unnecessary killing. After a pause, it added a single, simple mark to a dormant queue. Tagged with an ID code, OKOI, Amara status, potential. Then it went quiet again. Across the Empire, in places where light rarely reached, cryopod indicators that had been dark for ages flickered faintly as backup circuits checked themselves and found new power lines. Proxima 7 remained calm. Trade ships still docked and left. Students still walked through museum halls and stared at old human wrecks. But far from the station's clean corridors, in a cold storage bay under a mining platform on Callus 3, someone's eyes opened in the dark. They were human, they were trained. And somewhere deep in their mind a few old words stirred. Secure. Connect. No unnecessary killing. The RX Spire filled the main screen in Proxima 7's command center. All gold light and Sharbang's command center. All gold light and sharp angles. From orbit, the Zaphirian capital complex looked like a bright crown wrapped around its homeworld. Towers shone, traffic lines glowed. It was meant to look unshakable. Today, it looked tense. Emperor Caxith's image appeared in the center of the display. His skin held the faint violet hue common to core Zaphirians, but his eyes were a deep, hard black. Fine implants traced silver lines along his temples and down his neck, linking him to unseen networks. Behind him, the tall windows of the spire showed a calm sky. Inside the room, nothing felt calm. On Proxima 7, Commander Tessa Rourke stood at attention, with her hands behind her back. Dr. Evelyn Hart and Veltar stood slightly behind her. Jake Martinez sat on a simple chair to the side, barrier field around him lowered by special order. Commander Rourke, Caxith said, voice as smooth as polished stone, this station has sent 9 priority reports in 3 days. That is more than in the last 3 years. Explain. Tessa kept her voice level. You Radiants, she said. We have reason to believe that multiple human cryosleep survivors have awakened at scattered sites across the Empire. So far, their actions do not match normal patterns of rebellion or terror. Caxith's gaze shifted, taking in Jake with a cool look. And you are the source of this belief, he said. Jake met the Emperor's eyes, unbowed. Yes, Jake said. Sergeant First Class Jake Martinez, Earth Colonial Defense Force, at your service. I woke on Proxima 7. Others have likely woken elsewhere. You speak our language, Caxith noted. Your people took a lot of our records. Jake said, I assume you had good translators. Mine is just catching up. A faint flicker of annoyance crossed the Emperor's face. Dr. Hart. Caxith turned his attention to Evelyn. Your reports suggest this man's claims about our first contact with humans may be uncomfortable. Evelyn held his gaze. Our own seized logs, when lined up with his timeline, show that Imperial fleets launched their first major strikes against human colonies after the resource wars had ended and disarmament had begun. She said, our public history does not match that. Public history is shaped for unity. Caxith said, the core truth remains. Humans were unstable and dangerous. We secured the region. Secured, Jake asked quietly. You hit evac routes and half-empty arsenals. That is not securing. That is raiding a hospital and calling it a fair fight. Veltar grimaced slightly, but said nothing. Caxith's eyes chilled. Sergeant, he said, you are alive because my empire allowed you to wake. Choose your words. No, Jake said, just as calm. I am alive because my people built tough pods and because your salvagers lacked trophies. Your empire allowed me to stay alive after you found me. That is different. Tessa glanced at Evelyn. This was sharper than she would have chosen, but she understood why he said it. Caxith folded his hands. Let us speak plainly, he said. In the last 72 hours, we have had the following incidents. A relay station near the Lysa Rim went dark and came back under what appears to be new control. No casualties, traffic rerouted. On Callus 3, a mining platform lost central control for 30 minutes. When it came back, production was higher, safety protocols had been tightened, and certain private logs about human specimens were erased. In the Strontium Belt, Outpost Delta, 9 reported an intruder alert. By the time reinforcements arrived, security systems were improved. Cameras had better coverage. One secret holding cell had been emptied. There were no signs of a fight. He looked at Jake. Your signal from Proxima 7 was detected in the noise at 2 of these sites, he said. Your doctrine words match some of the changes. Jake listened carefully, his jaw tight. Any dead? He asked. None reported. Caxith said. Some guards were found sedated, placed in stable positions out of harm's way. One private torturer in the Callus 3 Black Site was locked in a cell with his own tools disabled. Veltar let out a small breath he did not know he was holding. So they heard you, Evelyn said to Jake. Secure, connect, no unnecessary killing. And they listened, Tessa added. Caxith drummed his fingers on his desk. Do not mistake this for mercy, he said. Hostile forces have taken Imperial property and altered classified systems. The fact that they did so gently does not make it harmless. Jake nodded once. I never said it was harmless, he replied. I said it was better than heads on spikes. Caxith leaned forward slightly. Sergeant Martinez, he said, you have made clear that more humans may wake. You have also shown through your little broadcast that they will likely heed your words, at least in part. That gives you influence. Jake said nothing. That was answer enough. So here is our position. Caxith went on. The Empire cannot allow a hidden network of foreign soldiers to grow inside its borders. We will not pretend that your people have any rightful claim to this space. Those days are over. However, he paused, choosing his words incomplete. If we crush every awakened human by force, we risk proving your accusations of past slaughter true once more in the present. Evelyn spoke up. Your radiance, she said carefully. There is also the risk of a long, quiet war. If we hunt them, they know doctrine. They already hold our relay paths and minds. We have seen how skilled they are at taking control points without bloodshed. Veltar nodded. They could hurt us badly without firing weapons. Data loss. Fuel redirection. Quiet failures. It would feel like bad luck, but it would be aim. Caxith's gaze hardened.
I am well aware, he said.
Which is why we are speaking instead of simply ordering a purge. He turned his eyes back to Jake. You claim you do not seek revenge, Caxith said. You claim your goal is to prevent another genocide. Prove it, tell your people to stand down. Surrender to imperial authority. Turn over all captured sites. Tessa winced slightly. Evelyn's lips tightened. Veltar held very still. Jake gave a small, bitter smile. With respect, Emperor, he said. That is not how this works. Caxith's fingers froze. Explain, he said, voice colder. Jake leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Humans did not wake up and check in at a single front desk, he said. They woke alone, angry, scared, and trained. Some woke in labs where your people were cutting them apart. Some woke in airless dump bays. Some woke under gun barrels. He lifted one hand. I got lucky, he said. I got Dr. Hart, Veltar, and Commander Rourke. I got questions instead of knives. He spread his fingers. The others did not. I can send signals. I can suggest rules, but I cannot snap my fingers and make them trust an empire that tried to erase them. So you admit you are not in full control, he said. I never claimed to be, Jake replied. Control is what got us into this mess in the first place. Empires thinking they can shape whole peoples like clay. He drew a slow breath. But I do have enough influence to make a difference, he went on. If you want to avoid a war, we need something other than surrender. And hope we are kind this time. We need terms. The word hung heavy in the room. Tessa looked at Caxith's image. The Emperor did not like that word. It made him look less like a ruler and more like a negotiator. What terms? Caxith asked at last. Jake's eyes were dark and steady. First he said, no more black labs. Any site holding human cryopods or human bodies is to be logged and monitored by joint teams. Zaphirian and human together. Joint, Caxith repeated. We do not even recognize humans as a sovereign group. You do now, Jake said quietly. Because you need something from us. The Emperor's nostrils flared, but he stayed silent. Second, Jake went on, amnesty for any awakened human who follows 3 rules. Secure without unnecessary harm. Connect honestly, no killing of unarmed civilians. Past actions in the resource wars are off the table. Too old, too messy. We start from the moment they wake. And if they break those rules? She asked. Then they answer to us as well as to you, Jake said. We police our own. You can try them under your laws, but I will not shield a human who butchers minors for sport. Evelyn watched him closely. The weight in his tone was real. Third, Jake said, truth, not the cleaned up version. A full, open record of the great Pacification. Human and Zaphirian logs, side by side. Let your people see that you struck during disarmament. Let mine see the resource wars in all their horror. No more simple stories. Viltar swallowed. That will shake a lot of people, he said. Shaken people ask better questions. Caxith's face had gone still, the way a statue looks still. You are asking for me to break my own myth, he said. I am asking you to stop living in it, Jake replied. The Emperor tilted his head, and in return, he asked, what do we receive? Jake's answer came without pause. A slow, careful change instead of a long, ugly collapse, he said. You get human minds working with you, instead of against you. You get our doctrine guiding people away from slaughter, instead of toward it. He sat back. Your empire is strong, he said. It looks stable, but under that smooth skin, you built a lot of your power on a rigged victory and quiet fear. That kind of thing rots over time. You may not see it yet. I do. Tessa thought of Callus III's black site logs that had vanished. She thought of the station guards who had woken gently tied, not killed. There was discipline there, resentment, yes, but also control. Caxith rested his chin on his hand. Suppose I reject your terms, he said. Suppose I send fleets to every site where a human might be. I seal the borders. I burn out this infection. Jake's gaze did not waver. Then you will win some battles, he said. You have numbers, ships, firepower. You will kill a lot of my people. They will kill a lot of yours. But you will never know how many small things they changed before they died. He nodded toward the data feeds. They already sit in your minds, he said. Your refineries, your relay nodes, your old war graveyards. They do not need big guns to make your life hell. They can stall fuel, reroute power, corrupt certain records. He looked almost tired. They can turn your proud calm into 1,000 small cuts, he said. And even if you crush them all, your empire will stand on nothing but fear. That kind of standing never lasts. Silence followed. Finally, Evelyn spoke, voice low but firm. Your Radiance, she said. For years I have worked with your records. I have seen the missing pieces. We ignored them because the full picture was not pleasant. Now the missing pieces are waking up. She took a breath. Witnesses are harder to use, but easier to live with. Veltar nodded slowly. If we do nothing but attack, we prove the worst things they think about us. If we set fair rules, we might gain partners who know more about old space than we ever will. Tessa raised her head. As security chief, she said, I will follow whatever order you give, Emperor. But I must report my view. A quiet, rule-bound handover of some power is safer than a hidden war we cannot see. Caxith's eyes narrowed slightly at the word handover, but he did not rebuke her. He looked at each of them in turn. Evelyn's steady calm, Veltar's anxious honesty, Tessa's hard, reluctant respect for Jake's logic, and Jake himself sitting there like a loaded weapon that had chosen not to fire. At last he spoke. Very well, Caxith said. We will test your way, human. Jake lifted his eyebrows. That word, plain and without insult, meant more than it seemed. Caxith continued. We will issue an internal order. All facilities holding human remains or pods are to report them to a central registry. No new experiments without approval. No casual destruction. Jake nodded slowly. We will also create a joint commission. Caxith went on. Zaphirian and human advisors. They will review cases where humans have seized control of imperial sites. If your people follow your rules, no unnecessary killing. Protection of civilians. We will lean toward negotiated transfers rather than assaults. He held up a finger. But hear me, Sergeant Martinez. If any awakened human begins slaughtering citizens, if they turn to sabotage that risks mass lives, we will respond with full force. Your doctrine words will not shield them. Jake's face was grave. I would not ask it to, he said. If they break the rules, they stand alone. Caxith's gaze turned harder. And as for this truth you demand, he said, we will open a review of our history modules. A controlled one, not a wild flood. We will add human records to our archives with clear tags. We will not, however, tear down every monument and tell our people they are monsters. Jake shook his head. I do not need statues to fall, he said. I need eyes to open. The Emperor leaned back. You will assist this commission, Caxith said. You will help us contact other awakened humans. You will use your influence to pull them toward cooperation. You will not build a separate empire within mine. If you do, this deal ends. Jake held his gaze. I can live with that, he said. If I see you breaking your side, running secret labs, hiding mass graves, I bring that into the light, publicly. Caxith's lips thinned. You are bold for a man in a cage. Jake glanced at the deactivated barrier around him. Cages are suggestions, he said. Rules are choices. You just made a better choice than I expected. Caxith did not answer that. Instead, he gave a sharp gesture. Commander Rourke, he said, you will oversee Proxima 77S. Dr. Hart, you will serve as scientific liaison to the Commission. Veltar, your expertise with human tech is now officially recognized. Do not disappoint me." All three bowed their heads in respect. "My last word for now is this," Caxith said, turning back to Jake. "If you use this opening to hurt my people, I will not hesitate again. There will be no second chance." Jake nodded. "Then we both have something to lose," he said. "That is a good start for peace." The Emperor's image blinked out. For a moment, the command center felt strangely quiet. Veltar let out a long breath. "Did that just work?" he asked. "Did we just talk an Emperor into bending history?" "No," Tessa said. "We moved him an inch. We will need to hold that inch every day." Evelyn looked at Jake. "And you, Sergeant," she said. "You just made yourself the bridge between two very angry shores." His shoulders sagged a little, as if the weight had finally settled on him. "I did not ask for that job," he said. "But here it is." Tessa studied him. "What now?" she asked. "Now," he said, "I write clear rules, and I try to make sure my people hear them before the loud ones do." Weeks passed. Safe corridors were set up between Proxima 7 and certain quiet sites. The relay near the Lysa Rim, the Callus 3 mines, a strontium belt outpost. On each world, the same strange pattern showed up. A control room door that should have been sealed opened at the exact moment the joint team arrived. Guards who expected a firefight found human figures in plain coveralls, hands empty, weapons dismantled and laid in neat piles on the floor. No bodies, no blood pools, just small changes. On Callus, 3 power grids had been rewired to reduce waste. Vent systems had been cleaned. Black lab logs were gone, but air quality for workers was better. At Delta 9, station cameras now covered blind spots that had worried local officers for years. Intrusion alarms, once sloppy, now ran on tighter settings. On the Lysa Rim relay, code that no Zaphirian had written optimized signal traffic and cut delays, and in every place, painted in simple human letters on a bulkhead or a doorframe, there were the same 3 words, SC sure. Consecti, restrain. When asked, Jake said he had not used the exact phrase restrain, but he understood. Different units had different shorthand. No unnecessary killing was long. Restrain was clearer. For a tight space, 1 the B, humans came to the table slowly. A pilot named Lynn, a medic named Farron, a small engineer team that had woken under the Callus. 3 platform and quietly taken control of life support before anyone above knew they existed. And Amara Okoye. She arrived on Proxima 10 weeks after Jake's first broadcast, escorted by a joint unit. She walked into Lab 4 with the easy balance of someone who had lived on ships her whole life. Her skin was deep brown, her hair bound back in tight braids. Her eyes were sharp and tired at the same time. "Martinez," she said, as if she had just seen him yesterday, not 800 years ago. "Mom," he said, and stood a little straighter, without thinking. Evelyn watched as the 2 humans looked at each other, soldier and logistics officer both out of time, both somehow steady. "You heard the call," Jake said. Amara nodded. "We heard more than that," she said. "Your words bounced through a lot of dead hardware. Old relays, hidden boxes. Someone back then planned for a future like this, even if they did not know the shape." She glanced around the lab. "So this is one of the places we are allowed to stand," she said. "Not as exhibits, as people. For now," Jake said, "if we do this wrong, there will be fewer of those places." Amara smiled without humor. "Always the cheerful one," she said. She turned to Evelyn, Tessa, and Veltar. "I am Amara Okoye," she said. "Former logistics officer, Earth Colonial Defense Force. My old job was moving people and supplies where they needed to be, on time, with as little waste as possible. Your Emperor wants this joint commission to work. He will need that skill." Veltar offered his hand, then hesitated, then kept it out anyway. Amara took it in a firm grip. "Welcome to Proxima 7, he said. "Is that welcome from you, or from your empire?" She asked. "The empire is learning." She studied his face, then nodded slightly. "That is all I can ask for now," she said. The commission's work was slow and often tense. They visited old battle sites and found human bones under Zaphirian memorials. They opened data vaults that had been sealed since the Pacification and watched raw footage from both sides. In some records, humans were clearly the aggressors. Old resource war clips showed human soldiers burning villages, wrecking rival wells, shouting with wild eyes. No alien hands touched those scenes. That was human madness alone. In others, Imperial fleets fired on ships, broadcasting clear evacuation codes. Human stations sent calls for talks and got silence. Then orbital bombardment. People on both sides winced as they watched. Veltar, who had grown up on clean, heroic holos of Empire ships bringing order, saw raw feeds of those same ships hitting hospitals by bad intel. He saw officers argue in old logs, some warning that the target lists were wrong, others pushing to strike before humans rearmed. Jake watched with a tight jaw. He did not try to pretend his people had been pure victims. He knew better. But he also saw the key moment when the Empire had chosen advantage over honesty. Evelyn spent long nights tagging clips, linking human and Zaphirian dates, marking where stories overlapped and where they clashed. Tessa sat in many of the review sessions with arms folded, saying little, but her eyes told their own story. Each new truth bent her picture of duty, but it did not break it. She filed the new facts in beside the old ones and adjusted her aim. Emperor Caxeth kept tight control over what went public. He did not open the full archive overnight, but he allowed new modules in schools, early human conflicts, joint records. The Great Pacification, a shared view. The first lessons were cautious. Still, they admitted things no Zaphirian text had ever said before. That was a start. 3. Miners now worked under both Zaphirian safety codes and a quiet set of Jake rules posted in small, cheap frames in rest halls. No unnecessary risk, no unnecessary harm. Most workers did not know those rules came from an 800-year-old human sergeant. They just liked that someone cared enough to write them. On the Lysa Rim relay, Zaphirian techs ran maintenance alongside a human engineer who had woken in the station's waste bay. She had been one bad call away from blowing the place when Jake's voice reached her. Now she checked code for hidden traps left by past wars. At Delta 9, a joint team walked the corridors. The human pilot who had woken there on a slab now taught young Zaphirians how to fly in low visibility fields. Trust did not come fast. Some Zaphirian parents pulled their kids away when a human passed. Some humans flinched when a guard's hand brushed a weapon. But the deaths that everyone had feared did not come either. There were fights, yes, sharp words, a few broken noses. In one case, a human survivor on a distant fuel depot did kill a guard who tried to drag him back into a lab. He was brought before the commission. Jake stood on one side of the room, Tessa on the other. Evelyn and Amara sat at a table with records in front of them. The human, Corporal Reyes, trembled with anger and fear. He had a collar, Reyes said. They were going to cut out my implants. He laughed while he did it to someone else. I heard it. I saw the table. Jake raised a hand gently. Corporal, he said, we are not here to say you had no reason to be afraid. We are here to ask, did you have to kill? Reyes' jaw clenched. I saw red, he said. I did what I was trained to do. Your training also said no unnecessary killing, Jake reminded him. You could have broken his arm. You could have knocked him out. You chose the throat. Reyes' shoulders shook. He would have done worse to me. Amara spoke softly. Maybe, she said, but if we let every scar justify any future act, this never ends. We are trying to stop that. Tessa's voice was hard, but not cruel. Under Imperial law, she said, killing a guard is a major crime. Under Jack's rules, this broke doctrine. The question is not whether what happened to you was wrong. It was. The question is how we answer it without lighting a bonfire. In the end, Reyes did not die. He was confined, closely watched, and put to work under strict limits. The lab where he had been held was shut down and turned into a medical bay for both humans and Zaphirians. The guard he had killed was named in a small ceremony, not as a hero or a monster, but as a person caught in a bad system. The sentence satisfied no one completely. That meant it was probably as fair as it was going to get. Word of the judgment spread. Some humans grumbled that Jake was too soft on Zaphirians. Some Zaphirians thought the Empire was bending too far for old enemies, but more often, in quiet mess halls and shared work shifts, people said the same basic thing. At least someone is trying to keep count. 1 year after Jake's first broadcast, Proxima 7 held a small, strange gathering in the same museum bay that had once shown human ships as primitive trophies. Now the old wreck still hung in place, but new displays had been added around it. On one side, a Zaphirian holoshow of the early empire's growth, including new clips that admitted mistakes and rushed strikes. On the other, a human panel with simple diagrams of resource war fronts, ration lines, and the first ceasefire. Between them, a narrow strip of space held a row of names, not just heroes, not just victims, names of people who had tried, in small ways, to stop the worst of both sides. A student crowd stood in front of the display, just as they had when Veltar was younger. This time, their guide's speech was different. Humans were not just wild, the guide said. They were afraid, like us. They built big weapons like us. They made mistakes like us. Our empire did not meet them at their worst or best, but somewhere between. This is part of why we now run joint stations in old battle zones, to keep history from repeating in the dark. Jake stood in the back next to Evelyn, Veltar, Tessa, and Amara. He watched a young Zaphirian boy reading the human panel. The boy's brow furrowed. "Dr. Hart?" Jake asked quietly. "Did you ever think we would get this far without a full revolt?" Evelyn smiled faintly. "I did not think we would get this far at all," she said. "But I also did not expect to meet a human who quoted doctrine more than he cursed." Veltar edged closer. "Are you satisfied?" he asked Jake. With this, Jake thought about it. "Satisfied is a big word," he said. "People died. Worlds cracked. None of this erases that. But if this is a choice between slow, careful balance and fast, loud ruin." He nodded toward the students. "I will take this," he said. "Any day." Tessa stood with her arms loose at her sides, for once not in armor. "You know," she said, "there's still plenty in the core who think we should have crushed every last pod and been done." "I know," Jake said. "There are plenty of humans who think we should be sabotaging your food lines right now." He looked at her. "That is why rules matter," he said. "They give people something to hold on to when their fear starts screaming." She considered that. "Do your people trust you?" she asked. "Some do," he said. "Some hate me. They wanted fire. I gave them slow burn." "And us?" she asked. "Do you trust us?" He took a moment before answering. "I trust some of you," he said. "That is more than I expected on the day I woke up. Trust is not a switch. It is a process." Amara folded her arms. "And the Empire," she added. "What do you think it will look like in 50 years? Jake watched the students again. "A little less sure of itself," he said. "A little more honest. Maybe with a few more human names on station rosters and a few more Zaphirian names in human stories." He smiled, faint but real. "An empire that knows it is not a god, just a big flawed machine people live in," he said. "That is not a bad thing." The museum lights dimmed for a new hollows. A joint recording played, Zaphirian and human voices, reading an agreed statement about the past. "We accept that our histories were shaped by fear and pride," the voices said. "We commit to facing the record together, even when it hurts. We will secure what we have without needless harm. We will connect across old lines. We will restrain the parts of us that only know how to strike. A quiet murmur ran through the crowd. Jake glanced at Evelyn. "You left my phrasing in there," he said. "We argued for hours over every word," she admitted. "Yours were clear, hard to improve." Veltar smiled. "Doctrine has its use," he said. Jake looked at him. "It kept us alive when the sky was falling," he said. "Now maybe it will keep us from dropping the sky on someone else." Outside the station windows, Proxima Centauri burned its gentle, steady red. Trade ships moved along their paths. Patrols drifted, calm but alert. The Zaphirian Empire still spanned dozens of systems. Its flag still hung in ports. Its rules still mattered, but now, in its mines and relays in quiet corners, humans walked too. Not as ghosts or exhibits, but as part of the daily math that kept life going. The easy victory that had filled so many history feeds no longer looked so clean. It looked like what it had always been, a hard, ugly thing done in a moment of fear, covered later by a shiny story. That story was changing, not with riots, with talks in small rooms, with logs opened and read, with a tired sergeant from old Earth reminding people, over and over, that power without rules always comes back to bite. On a cluttered desk in Lab 4, Jake kept a short list on a simple screen. It had 3 headings: Assure, Consect, Restrain. Under each, he added small notes as days passed, practical things, reminders, names. Under Restrain, he had written in plain letters, "No more genocides, not ours, not theirs." He touched that line sometimes when the weight felt heavy. Duty, he knew now, was not just about holding a gun or a station. It was about holding a story steady while people tried to twist it into something easy. Easy stories had almost killed his species. The new story was harder. It had guilt on both sides, and no clean heroes. But it was honest, and from that honesty, for the first time, in a very long time, something like a future could grow.